Lights, camera, action. This is the Aya Om podcast. This episode is on mastering intuitive healing capacities. First, I'll answer the question, what is intuitive healing? Then I'll go into a little reflection on why my specific design of who I am leads to healer. Heal in my one-on-one sessions and how I tap into my intuitive capacities to help with the healing process, and how you can learn to be an intuitive healer even if you're not a healer in a career or vocational sense. We are all intuitive healers to heal ourselves, to heal others, and tapping into your intuition will allow your potential to open up in new ways, to flower new possibilities in all areas of your life. So, what is intuitive healing? The intuitive system is not the rational mind. It's not the five sense reality and making logical inductions and deductions in that whole linear logical process. The intuitive capacities are the faculties of the subconscious. It's that split second knowing that happens even before the conscious mind that we can get a glimmer of if we're fully present in the body and not in the thought process. It's our first sense impression, and there are various impressions that happen in this subconscious layer. What this means is you have energy fields around you. You have intuitive senses that are not the five senses. These are your higher sense faculties, often known as the clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance, etc. These refer to not seeing with your eyes, but seeing with your inner eye. Not hearing with your ears, but hearing with your inner ear. In terms of energy, these are of the energy bodies. These are a more subtle level of you. They're not according to the physical body, but they have the same faculties. There are still hearing, but it's the lower, more subtle vibrational hearing. You're hearing things that aren't being said in some sense. You can also receive different information from different sources, which might not be local, so it might not even be a local sound. You're picking up on messages that are in the ethers, that are in the energetic fields, but they're not so gross. They're not so gross as to stimulate the five senses. So you can pick up on these, and we all have a capacity to unlock all of our clairs. We're all highly psychic. It just depends on our development, what we came here to do in this life, what we've cultivated in this life, and we all have different, like a dominant system. Some of us are more body-based. We feel things. This could be sensational. This could be empathetically. This could be, we hear things, we see things, we have clear knowings, clear cognizance. We all have these, and we can hone them. Now, I'm a very intuitive person by design. If you want to go into my spiritual charts, the human design, the astrological charts, Chinese zodiac, all those things, it always points to intuition for me. I'm not highly developed naturally in the rational world of science and linear. I have developed a lot of it, but by design, I'm most successful in life when I'm working with my intuition. And I mentioned this by design stuff because I found this to be really important, especially over the last 5 years of my life. I found that, especially starting a business, what I did is I looked to others who were successful and I tried to imitate them. And I tried to do this for many people. And the funny thing is, you'll always find contradictions, whether you're in the spiritual traditions or in the business world, of someone saying, you should advertise like this, and someone saying the opposite of what you should or shouldn't do. Same thing in spirituality. You should have sex, you shouldn't have sex. people do this, right? It's supposed to be that way so you can find your truth. And I have found understanding my design, my very unique way of moving through the world, how I am energetically, what my gifts are, allows me to be highly successful, allows me to own my gifts in a way that life is most easeful for me. There is still work to be done. There is ever so much work to be done. But when you do what you love and you're living in your design, it's a harmonious flow. You're not swimming against the current. So my design is very intuitive, so I'm quite knowledgeable on this subject, and I've studied it in various traditions with many different healers and masters. So I do profess to have a great knowledge of this, so I can impart some of that, especially if you're not intuitive. But if you're looking to really hone your intuitive skills, this podcast is for you. And a lot of the things that I teach, such as breathwork, shamanic qigong, system, skill. Well, for me, I work best in life when I'm completely intuitive. To the best of my abilities, I'm making all decisions in the snap of a moment, and there's a flow. That's when my life goes best. And the funny thing is, in human design, I'm a reflector. And one of the most pronounced aspects of being a reflector is that we struggle to make decisions because it usually takes us 30 days to make a decision, because the orbits and how we cycle through things, it's like being 30 different people over 30 days. We take a different perspective every day. So it's hard to come to a conclusion before those 30 days because we haven't processed it on all levels of our ever-changing being. So as a reflector, this is something I've resonated with very deeply with this particular typing, is that that's true. But I can work around that because jobs and relationships don't always give you the buffer space of 30 days. I work around this by making decisions in the snap of a finger, and I can only do this when I'm deeply in tune with my body. If I've been working on the computer and I've been doing very logical stuff and I've become disembodied and doing things out of my highest excitement, I can't make those decisions very well. So I've had to shift my life into my authentic way of moving through the world, which involves a lot of embodied practice. This is why I practice from 2 to 4 hours, often more, I'm at 6 years or more of consistently doing this every day. This allows me to be very in my body, that I know my system very well, and I'm a very kinesthetic person, meaning I'm very connected to the sensations of my body, and that's one of the ways that I receive intuitive communication. So how does this work? Say I'm with somebody and I'm offering a healing, and they're speaking. My body is reading their energy fields. I don't have to pay attention to this consciously, because my subconscious is doing this. But if I want to pay attention to something going on, I can listen into my body, and my body will speak to me. Not in terms of clairaudience, in which it will say English or words, though I do have that active and it works sometimes. My dominant way of receiving information is intuitive sensations and a clear knowing or claircognizance. So I might get my hip twisting out to a side. I might feel a heaviness somewhere. There's many sensations and things that happen in my body. And then there's a clear knowing that happens because there's a translation there, right? If my hip twists, like, what the fuck does that mean? It's on my hip twist. How am I supposed to know what that means? I have a deep connection with what that means for me. And I have a deep connection with just the knowingness that comes from being in tune, in service, and aligned in a good way. So I own this way of living by living a very embodied kinesthetic life. Now, another piece on the reflector, because I shift through all of those designs over the 30 days, it requires that I live a life that is very diversified. I used to work a 9 to 5 and just work a 9 to 5. Now I do, and this could be in a given day, this could be in a week, coaching, teaching medical qigong, doing energy healings, doing breathwork sessions, leading breathwork circles or events or workshops or retreats or online programs, or I'm a writer, or I'm a podcaster, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a martial artist, I practice yoga and qigong and breathwork. There's so many things, and I'm constantly choosing the thing that feels most representative of my highest excitement, of what's in alignment with what I'm going through, because I'm always cycling through these different aspects of myself. Now, the truth is, we all have every aspect of every human design and zodiac within us, and we just have ones that are more dominant that we resonate more with. So maybe you're like this as well, and you have all these things that you like to do, and there's a clever and peculiar orchestration of your life energies because of the way that you move between, that you dance between the many things that you love to do. Or maybe you are more of a 9 to 5 linear logical, whatever works for you. And that's when you're alignment, that's when you're going to evolve the fastest. That's when your higher psychic capacities will come into alignment, and they'll be made more clear to you and how to work with them. So intuitive healing for me looks like, in my modalities, massage, breathwork, energy healing, and guidance of multiple systems of qigong, yoga, breath practices, and other mixed mind-body arts. Now, I do logical sequences. I've learned standard procedures. I know sequencing in yoga. I understand how these things work, and that's why I can be more intuitive. I have enough practice hours in that I put in the work that I can show up and I can just allow things to flow naturally. But I back and forth. It's kind of like for a comedian or a rapper. They do a free stage and they let things go, and this is part of the creation cycle. And there's like a point where you can get in the mastermind, when you're in your mastery, when you're in flow, and you can tap in and you can bring through stuff that you can't bring out anywhere else, other than if you're in front of a crowd and there's an energy there, there's an interaction that's truly unique, and you work with that energy. Everyone in the room, the environment, the day, the astrological cycling of the stars, everything is aligned in a peculiar way that produces a very unique moment. Each moment is like that. And for someone intuitive, they're reading all of that. Not necessarily consciously, but it's being factored into the way that our energy works. I'm very connected to my environment. When I walk into a space, I feel the energy of the space. Not just the objects, but the energy that is in the space. This is a sensitivity that I've always had and I've also developed. Sometimes you can feel what has been going on in the space. There can be dark energies, light energies. If you have a healing space, I can get a sense for if the healings are really good, if there's like a really powerful healing space, or if they're so-so. In the information fields, because we imprint empty space. It's not just empty space. It's filled with energy. Many people are familiar that if you go to a site like Auschwitz, there's a density there. There's a heaviness there because the information fields carry a lot of what has occurred there in the past. So too with individuals, we have energy fields around us. There's a lot of beautiful research done by the HeartMath Institute on the electromagnetic heart, and even our bones. Everything is creating an electromagnetic signature. The information fields carry all of this from the minute cells to the larger systems, such as the meridian and organ systems of medical Qigong. When you become sensitive to reading these fields, you can read an individual's energy fields and tune in to various levels. Meaning I can tune into organ systems and I can see if there's blocked emotion there. I can tune into chakras where there's blockages of energies along the central column of the spine. I can get an overall sense at the subtle energies of what they're experiencing. Kind of like, this is what, most people have this. You're in a room with somebody. You can get a sense if they're really happy or really sad. There's a difference in the energy based on positive or negative emotions. There's polarization. These things can be felt at various levels of our own body. You might feel that empathetically. If you learn to work with your hands and energy heal, you'll feel the difference in the energy fields as heat or coolness or a magnetism or a pushing away force, like an electric force, a stimulating force. Field around it that we can learn to feel and work with. So when I'm in a one-on-one healing session with somebody, my subconscious system is picking up on all this. And if I'm offering a treatment like an intuitive breathwork session, I'm going to develop the whole session around my intuitions. As I mentioned, I have standard treatments, so I make sure it's something comprehensive. I'm not missing any parts. I'm addressing the whole person, body, mind, spirit. But I'm also listening to what is needed in the moment rather than just having a set routine that I go through every time. How this applies to when I teach, if I'm teaching a class, like a yoga or Qigong class, I might have a specific class I'm teaching, like a relaxing class or a stimulating class. But when I get there, I can't always have a plan, because if I have a plan, I don't know who I'm teaching necessarily. If I have a plan for a bunch of high-level asanas with a bunch of inversions and balancing postures, and the class isn't able to do those, I have to throw that away. So this development of the intuitive skill, the freestyle, is very important to be able to properly address who you're working with. And it's so much more fun, in my opinion. I really enjoy it because I'm a guest in that experience. I'm witnessing it as it's happening. I don't know what's going to happen before I do it. So the way in which I'm acting is impersonal in some sense. It's not coming from me. It's not coming from a pre-planned set of things. It's just flowing out of me, and I can witness it. And there's a spontaneity that you can feel in those classes, and you can feel this when you watch a really good freestyle rapper. You can feel their flow, and you can get in that. It's an energy that they're cultivating. They're attuning to energies moving through, and in the energy work systems that I work with, that's the whole idea. Is when I do energy healing, I'm not giving my energy to individuals. I'm allowing energies to flow through me from heaven above and earth below, through my body, through my central channel, through my arms, and through my legs. I'm a conduit for that healing energy, because healing in this context is becoming whole. It's connecting with your holiness. Healing whole and holy all come from the same word. That's true healing to me, is your connection with your soul, because your soul is perfect, and when we can align with that template, the body and the mind will begin to become coherent with it, and our energy systems will come back into harmony. It's when we're out of line with our design, out of alignment with our designment, we come out of health and into dis-ease rather than ease. So true healing for me is not something someone can do for you, though I am a healer and there are healers such as massage therapists who apply external and therapeutic measures to help people find their center and their wholeness. The true healing is you connecting in, because you are your own best healer. You're the only one capable of providing true healing at the highest level. So as a conduit for healing energies, as a conduit for life force energy, as a space holder, as a doula, as somebody who wants to support people, I'm listening to the intuitive intelligence that flows through me to help assist them to connect with their own intuitive intelligence so that they can find their healing. So once again, let's go back to the session. They're lying down for my breathwork sessions typically, unless we're doing Aya breathwork. If we're doing conscious connected breathwork like Breathwave, they're lying down, and I weave in tons of different practices and I choose them organically. So at first I set up the energies. One of the ways that I do that is that I do a 1 through 10 ritual from a Qigong Taoist lineage where in short, I move energy through my body from head to toe, and I connect down with earth energies. I move those energies through and around my microcosmic orbit. I build up and cultivate my own qi and prana in my lower dantian, which fills me with vitality. I connect the central column of my spine up to my higher self and my guides. I bring light through my spine, and I fill up a lot of my body and energy centers. This helps to create consciousness. I'm scanning my body, so my intention, my focus, my presence, I'm fully there. All my actions, my thoughts, everything is in one direction, and that's to be a clear channel. That's to be a conduit for these healing energies of love and light. And then I set my intentions, said out loud or in my mind, and then I set the stage by creating sacred space, which is part of invocations, speaking to what I'm calling in directions, honoring the land, the spirits, the indigenous people who watch over these lands, etc. And then I go into the actual practice. I first clear their energy. There's a number of ways I can do this. Sages, smokes, feathers, brushing off their energy, moving the energy with my hands, creating light bubbles, etc. And then from there, if we're in a breathwork session, I'm guiding them into the session. I'm guiding them into the rhythm of breathing. And then it's a listening of how the breath is moving or how their energies are flowing. There's a number of ways I can read this. Now, the breath pattern is a great way to read somebody's energy. And there is a language of the breath. And yes, you can write it down and translate it. But it's an intuitive language. When you read somebody's breath, and anyone can do this, you can do this even if you've never done it before, you could try mimicking their breathing pattern, especially if you're in the room with them, because they're giving off an electromagnetic field of feeling of what they're going through, mentally, emotionally, and physically. These are all vibrational frequencies. By mimicking their breathing pattern, you attune your nervous system to their system. When you're in attunement with them, you're in the same field as them. And to the degree that you can match up with their system, and being in a field of love and safety helps this tremendously. So this is really important to establish in the healing context, or if you want to help people or read your loved ones. It'll be most easy if you're in a field of love and safety, so there has to be trust involved. And if you can be in this safe field with them, the information exchange between you is tremendous. Think about a partner that you've had or a parent who you've deeply loved and you've been really connected with. There are times when you can think the same thoughts at the same time, or you can feel the same things at the same time, and you both know it and recognize it, and it feels tremendous. It feels like magic. It feels like you're reading their mind, but you're just thinking the same thought at the same time because you're on the same wavelength, because you're both vibing, because you're in the vibe tribe. You're both living in love. It's a good feeling. This is how we heal at a very mass scale, is when we create these ripples of synchronicity and that was the wrong word. What's it called when you sync up with somebody? That word. When you do that with somebody, and you can do this en masse, you can help to co-regulate many people, because we can entrain the other nervous systems. We can create a vibrational standard in some sense, which people can rise to by the degree of resilient regulation in a collective community, and others can benefit from this. We're keeping the vibes high to raise the vibe tribe. So when you're tuning into another person's energy field, know that your body is a receiver and conduit of energy. Your hands in particular receive energy and they give energy. Particularly, they give energy through your fingertips and the palm of your hand, also known as Lao Gong point. So if you wanted to practice, you could do this on yourself or somebody else. Just bring your hand with an open palm over somebody's body. And if you're about a centimeter off their body, you'll probably feel warmth. And you'll connect here with their physical field, which accords to the lower dantian, the lowest energy center below the navel. And you can pick up a certain amount of information from this field by moving your hand over various parts of the body, yours or other people. If you go a little bit further, say 6 inches to a foot, you're more in the emotional field. You tap into that field. You also want to tap into your emotional body, because this is one of the ways in which you become a better healer, is you become a better feeler. I feel like I should wrap my podcast one day. And what you do is you get more in touch with what you're feeling, and then you can also tune into what they're feeling. And this gives you a superpower that not a lot of people hone, is that what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. These are my feelings, and there's a border and boundary between what I feel and you feel. And when we have that boundary, and it's with love and with respect, we can be a lot more sovereign and resilient, self-regulated, and equanimous in our emotions and what we're feeling, because we're not so entangled and meshed and fused with other people. Because it's often that we have an early childhood experience where we have a codependent relationship or something that causes our energy fields to be open in a way which is often subconscious. We're not conscious of this fully, but we take on the emotions of others, or we're sensitive to the emotions of others, and this affects our emotional fields. So there's a process here of learning borders and boundaries, and there might be some healing, some releasing of old stories, and an empowerment process there. And I do help people with this kind of process. But this all happens naturally through breath work as we become a greater master of our own energy. Because one of the parts in honing this skill is to become more aware of when other energies are in your field. So we're learning to become aware of these fields just as we're aware as our physical body, and if someone was touching us. We're aware of how other energies are affecting us. And there's a lot of other energies affecting us. Because energy is not bound to time and space. People thinking about you, especially your loved ones across the planet, affect your field. And you may have had experiences. I've had many. One I can think of is when my elder passed away, I went down to the beach and I just started crying and crying and crying. No idea why. And then I came back and I heard that he had passed away. So we can pick up on things as they happen because we're aware of them. We're connected with those people in a deep way. We have so much more potential and capacity in our system, in our potential, than most people talk about in schools and our upbringing. So it's important to bring this information through. So we can pick up on those energy fields and build better boundaries, build more resilience in our own nervous system by creating more regulation in our field. This is one of the byproducts, or this is one of the goals even, of the breathwork practice, is to create more solidarity, more regulation, because it all goes together. Self-realization, self-regulation, self-healing. We're learning to use the life force that is all around us to accomplish things that we've been seeking outside of ourselves for. Many types of healings that people seek outside of themselves can be done through Qigong and breathwork, all within the self. Many types of therapies, many aspirations and things people seek to the point of sacrificing important things to them, can actually be found within us. Actually, I would go so far as to say everything, all the most important things, are found within you. How could it be any other way? You are the source of love. You are the source of all creation. So that doesn't mean we can't live an external life and have a worldly life and work and play and do all the things that we love to do. There's a whole switch over in the system when we learn to first resource ourselves in a developed way with our own inner knowing. This is what happens when we start turning within and asking the deep questions to our own heart instead of Google. This is when we reach a certain level of mastery, when we tune in to meditation and Qigong before we go to our doctor. Depends how far in your mastery and what you have. Of course, I'll parentheses that. But I turn within if anything goes wrong. And I haven't been sick in over a decade, because by the time something begins to come up, I start my healing work. I get on it. I figure out what's going on. And it's worked so far so well. For as long as I can remember. I can't remember the last time I've been sick. It's been a long time. So we have a capacity to heal. And this bleeds into the whole TCM, traditional Chinese medicine system, and other indigenous systems, holistic systems, which are found throughout the world, is that there is a universal energy called Qi or Qi or Prana. They're not necessarily the same thing, but various cultures are speaking about a larger system of energy, which is life force, which is the force, the basic substance of all life. And we have a capacity to align our energies, just like we can align to our soul's blueprint. And from there, healing happens naturally. Now, this might mean at some level, at some point, energies come in and they heal, spontaneous remissions, or they have the energy so that our body has the resources to do its healing. But it's also that when you connect your mind with your higher self, with your soul, you make the right decisions that lead you on the path of healing. Meaning that maybe you tune in to your heart and you have this intuition to reach out to Jim, and you go reach out to Jim. And Jim lends you a hand, and you learn something from Jim, and he introduces you to Jane, and Jane and Jim teach you a lot of beautiful things. See how that works? So there's an intuitive guidance, which is one of the ways in which our higher self or soul speaks to us. So when I'm in a healing session, part of my guidance is coming from my higher self. Part of it's coming from the life energies, the heavens above, the earth below, all of which have a consciousness. Our planetary star, the star that is the big kahuna in the sky of our planetary system. These all have a quality of consciousness like a being. Everything has a spirit. We can also tune into the individual we're working with and their energy fields. There's so much we can tune in to receive information, because everything is energy and information, right? Even the fake plant on my desk here has energy and information. It's got less life force than the beautiful plant on my windowsill over here, but I ain't playing favorites. But I like them both. But there's a different quality to their energy based on the information they contain. One is made more of plastic, and one is made more of carbons and all the other things that plants are made of. Once again, a lot of this work of working with the intuition and our higher psychic sensitivities, it's about getting out those old limiting beliefs and the things that we were told. Like many kids, I would say all kids have intuitive capacities naturally, but many kids, once again, are more dominant in these things, just as many adults are. But it's the stories and the other things that get built into us that have us believing that these things don't work and that they're not appropriate or they're not real because the parents or the school don't see the world that way. And we're conditioning our children and projecting our current understandings and beliefs, and we're coming out of a culture and society that has had these things suppressed. This isn't found around the world, right? There's many indigenous practices or cultures who have beliefs that have been preserved for many thousands of years from our ancestors who were shamanic people, or very early proto-religious organizations and sects and ways of seeing the world which are more in alignment with this holistic view, which views everything having a sovereign consciousness, everything is having a spirit, a life to it. And this is the knowledge that is found around the world because it's a basic understanding of the universal laws of energy. And when you become sensitive enough to energy, this all becomes brilliantly apparent because you can feel it and know it intuitively. And no one's got to prove it to you on a podcast or in a science equation, math equation, pardon me. So your intuitive capacity is far greater than your rational capacity because you're working with the subconscious over the conscious. The difference between your conscious mind is, like, as an example, your conscious mind uses your short-term memory. How many items can you hold in your short-term memory? Let's think about how long of a phone number can you memorize. But your intuitive capacities are your subconscious. Your subconscious can hold vastly more information. It's parallel processing instead of serial. It's processing so many things all at once, and it doesn't have, what's the word in a computer? It's so much RAM. It's got much more RAM that it has. Random access memory, I believe that stands for. So there's so much more bandwidth. I hope I'm using this computer lingo right. Otherwise, my computer tech friends aren't going to be very happy with me. Or my dad or my sister, maybe. they're the tech savviest ones in the family. So once again, let's bounce back into that healing session. So they're on the table, done the healing done the clearing. Begin to watch the breath. The breath is that great print of how the life energies are flowing through, how the breath flows through is a representation of how energy is moving through our chakras, especially if you're sensitive to the energies in the subtle body of the spine. Once again, you become more aware of these things as you become more aware of them in yourself. Know thyself, and then you can know others. You can meet people there. You can take people to the places that you've been, and you can hold space for them there. So you can feel as moving your hands over, especially in coordination with their breathing. There's another method that I'll share here, that you grab their ankles and you're rooted down in like a Wuji standing posture, which is a bent knee Qigong posture. And you send a seismic ripple through their body. And it's like a ripple moving through, and you track it as it moves up through their legs to the crown of their head and back down. How do you send this seismic ripple? With your mind, intention, breath, and you can use your visualization if you want. How does that work? You just making this up? Well, the mind might think that, but you can do that. You can do anything with energy. Now, in the beginning, your mind might block you from feeling, and this is what happened to me. So I think this is important to share. When I started energy healing, when I started distance healing, when I started doing all of these things, sometimes I could get intuitions. I could feel things. Most of the time, I just got frustrated and said, this is a bunch of bullshit. I've just paid a lot of money. I've signed up for this. These people are all a bunch of quackies. This is so messed up that I'm doing this. I'm not feeling anything. This is all ridiculous. Why did I do this? Because what was happening was, as I was trying to feel, I was running up against my belief system. And I was hearing not my voices, but the superego's voices. The cultural voices. Oh, I guess my voice would be in there too. But this was what I had been conditioned to see, which isn't for me the truth I'm at now. It was just a point at which I was perceiving from. And because I was blocked in my belief systems, I was unable to experience, because my belief system is what I was projecting into my environment. As I began to loosen my belief systems by continuing on the path, I eventually was able to get out of my own way enough that I was able to rewrite belief systems and step into these higher sensitivities and intuitions and trust them. Trusting them is key because, you don't want to be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. If I have an intuition about somebody and I feel that they might be mad at their uncle, I don't want to just assume that I know this. I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to give a misimpression. I don't want to give them misinformation. So I still do this, and especially in the beginning, I was like, these are my intuitions. I don't know if this is right or wrong. This is what I've experienced, which is true. This is what I've experienced. This is what I offer. And if it resonates with you, great, let's work with it. If not, let's toss it to the side. And in doing that, in confirming my intuitions enough, I began to trust myself. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, it's like that first moment you get that hit. And then after, the mind will come in and be like, no, that's not this. I'm making this up. And it's true, the mind will make things up. So there's a process of learning to listen to the heart and not the mind, or the heart mind they call it sometimes. Or passing information through the mind into the heart. Because the heart works on resonance. When there's a truth and you know it, it plucks the string of the heart in perfection. It rings out in a good way. When you ask your body something and you know it's a lie, it shouldn't ring through in the same way. And how attuned you are to that is how connected you are to yourself. This is why I spend so much time in practice. So I know when my instrument is out of tune, because then I can't be a clear channel. Then I can't do my healings in a good way. Then I'm out of connection with myself. So there's a process there of learning to listen to those intuitive communications, and we all get those different, remember. Could be in the body, could be hearing things. And then learning to trust, learning to check in with ourselves about how true they are, or going into further inquiry. Some people like to use guides. Some people like to work with the energies in different ways. There's a number of different pathways. We won't go into those all right now. But we can work with the energies and the information in a few different ways to verify it within ourselves, or to gather more information. Because sometimes we pick up on something and we want to explore it further, right? So as I'm doing the healing, I might pick up on some information. I might write it down or just store it in my mind. I might use that information to guide the healing session in a different way. And I'll share another piece of how I heal. I test limbs and body parts. This could be organs, but I'll share about limbs. So I've shared like the seismic ripple that you can just send through the body with your mind. And another thing I'll do is I'll pick up the leg and I'll feel the tone of the leg. Once again, this comes with practice, but an individual who has a lot of stored tension or blocked energy channels in the leg, I can feel that, especially relative to an individual who has a very open leg. It's especially if they're breathing, because there's a lot of energy moving through the nervous system. I can feel that. And I'll begin to move the leg subtly, grossly. And through these soft, hard, subtle, gross, all the different variations of movement, I can get a sense for the energies in the leg. And then I can intuitively move the system to help relieve those tensions. Once again, this is a quality that I've cultivated within myself. If I have a tension in my body, well, I'm just going to explore it. I'll wiggle. I'll spin it in its full rotation. I will lift up something heavy. I'll stretch it. I'll mobilize it. I'll massage. Tap it. I can get somebody else to slap it. There's no end to all the ways that we can heal our bodies, because there's so many levels of muscle and fascia and bone, and things can be stored on all these different levels. So I'll start to do that with an individual. I'll begin to maybe massage or rotate the leg. I typically won't be slapping them or doing any of that weird stuff, but maybe that's what the intuition calls for. Depends on the context of what we're speaking about, of course. But in the healing session, typically not. And as I'm doing this, I'm going throughout the body, testing limbs, neck, spine, seeing where there's energy. I had a client today, she had a brow furrow. When your brows are scrunched up, right? Often when you're concentrating or you're frustrated or holding anger, your brows furrow. And I wanted to bring some attention to it, so I put my 2 fingers on the brow and saw if that would respond well. First, I was just like testing the energy, so just touch it, get a sense for it, and it was wanting to furrow. So I gently pulled it to stretch the fascia. And it furrowed, and I was like, okay, well, might as well move it a little bit and pull away, and then I coached it. I was like, release the brow, and we worked with it for a little while. So that's a way, it's like you begin to work with all of your senses to explore with curiosity. And the body, their body, or your body will guide you. Like when I move an arm, sometimes the arm wants to move. I may be moving it in a circular direction, and all of a sudden the arm begins to move, like the nerves begin to fire. And this might be releasing an old pattern or trauma from the system, so I support the arm in doing what it's doing. It's resourcing itself with its intelligence. The intelligence, it knows how to heal. Much of the work of true healing is just that, is allowing the body to heal itself. Just as when we come into meditation, there's a whole process of quieting the mind, which is not achieved through forcing the mind to shut down or shut off. Is if you simply sit long enough, the mind begins to just slow. And then eventually it can come into stillness. Like sediment falls to the bottom of water, and the water is no longer murky because it's not being stirred up. So too with the body, it is always healing itself. You get a cut, what happens? It heals itself. So too with our bodies, if we give it enough rest and recovery space in a safe environment, the body knows how to heal. And we can support it in small ways, space holders, breathwork practices, but we're resourcing ourselves with that intuitive intelligence that lives within every cell. So let's jump into how you can learn to heal. I've shared a bunch, but I'll do a little review and add a few pieces. You can learn to heal by just becoming more intuitive. How do you become more intuitive? Do whatsoever you can do which is most exciting for you where you don't have to think about it, you don't have to force yourself to do it. This should be something that comes natural to you, where you can move without hesitation. For me, and for many people, dancing is par excellence. Because ecstatic dance. Because you're freely moving, you're intuitively moving. You don't have to think, so long as you're free enough, you're embodied enough, and you're dancing hard enough to get out of your own mind. But martial arts is amazing for this. Rolling jiu-jitsu for me. Yoga, qigong. As you can tell, I like embodied arts, but this might be painting for you. Or even writing for me. I can tap into my intuitive capacity to just allow things to flow through. It might be cooking. You can really do anything intuitively if you can get into it, but typically we have a few things that are most exciting for us that we can do without hesitation, and that builds a flow in us. Because so much of our life is methodical and planned and stoplights and traffic, and it's not this beautiful flow. Getting the body in flow builds a momentum. And that momentum, we can make those snap judgments, which are reflective of listening to the intuitive intelligence. Now, if you want to apply intuition to healing, begin a self-healing process. To best do this, support your environment. Light your candles. Be in a dark room. Set aside time. Half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour. Have a tub of coconut oil. Some good music. Some bolsters, some things to stretch on, and start massaging. Feel for tensions. Jiggle the body. Breathe into the body. Relax the body. Love the body. Be in the body and let the body guide you into what it wants. Do this with a lover. Do this with a friend. The more that you can play with different qualities of energy internally and externally in your environment and with the people you're with, you're going to pick up things. This is a really cool part about me being an intuitive healer. If I go to a massage therapist or if I work with somebody, sometimes even if they haven't shown me what they do. I'll give two examples. One, I went for a massage, and she's an amazing massage therapist. And she worked on me for an hour, and she did a number of different techniques, whole body session. And the next day, I was doing some body work on somebody, and she's like, "Oh, do you know?" I forget what the method was. The Bowen method, I believe. I wasn't familiar. I was familiar. I think I downloaded videos of that, and I haven't researched it yet, or looked at them. Anyways, she's like, "Oh, you were doing this type of technique," and I was like, "Oh, I think my massage therapist offered me that technique, and I did it, but I did it in a different way. Like, she did it on my leg, and I was doing it somewhere else. So I hadn't really even been taught this technique, but it was learnt in my system." And in another example, I was teaching medical qigong to a teacher who has a number of great skills, from breathwork to he's a romance coach, and he does craniosacral, and he's a yoga teacher, I'm pretty sure, and just a very talented person. And I was working with his atlas and his sacrum, and I was picking up on all these ways that I could guide him from the standing position to do subtle adjustments of his whole cerebral spinal cord. Of his whole spinal cord. And I was basing a lot of it on movements of the cranium and the sacrum. And then I tuned in and I was like, "Oh yeah, this dude's a craniosacral therapist. This is perfect." And what I was picking up on, because I read people's energy fields as I teach them, I was picking up on his capacity, and it was filtering through me as a conduit, and then I was able to teach him something about craniosacral that he hasn't done before, and I was learning it as well. So that's an example of how when we work with the intuitive fields, we can learn. And for me as a healer, it's really rad because I just go get healings from all these different people, and then I just pick up on little pieces of their skill, and then I integrate it into my base knowledge. And that's how a lot of intuitive teachers work. Like rappers, if you're a freestyle rapper, you go to different rap events. I'm sure, I don't know, I don't actually do that. But I know I've watched 8 Mile, so I think that's what happens. And if you're a comedian, you go to different clubs and you just stand up and you do your thing. And then you build a set, and then eventually you have enough material to have a set. And you can do that, but that initial cultivation is really important. Same with teaching yoga. Whatever your skill is, there's that capacity we can to pick up in that intuitive way. Another thing that we chatted about in the beginning is we all have a dominant intuitive system. So getting to know what yours is. Do you see things? Are you a highly visual person? Are you kinesthetic? Most people are kinesthetic. They feel things, sensations in their body. Empathetic, clairvoyant. I already said that one, but claircognizant, which is clear knowing. Do you see auras? There's a number of different ways of perceiving various dimensions of light, because it's not always auras that we're seeing. Sometimes we're bringing in other images which are more symbolic or representative of things that are a message we're receiving, or there's so many levels to it, right? So getting to know what works best for you, and of course you can learn multiple systems and how to develop other sensitivities. There's Qigong meditations for learning all the different clairs, so if you'd like to work with me, we can dive into some of those things. But the key I'll round off everything with is trust. A deep connection to yourself, with your own design, living in harmony with yourself, following what your highest excitement is, moving without hesitation, and just living in that flow of life. And when you do, your whole life energies, they flow. More synchronicity in your life, more ease. This is part of the Taoist and Qigong system, and everybody's familiar with the yin and yang symbol, the Taiji. The representation here is the balance between light and dark, the balance between effort and ease. So this isn't just hustle culture. This is hustle and flow. A little bit of both is that middle way where we work a bit, we play a bit. Most rewarding. You work all the time, you turn into a dull boy and you go crazy. You don't work at all, you lack purpose often. You can get stagnation, and then you just, I don't know who you are. Maybe you're filling your glutton hole and you're an empty ghost and it's not satisfying. There's this balance between the dualities of life where we find the most harmony and equanimity, and then we're not so polarized in either pole. We're free to move from one side to the other, happy and sad, highs and lows. Pole. So there's a balance there. And just as the intuition is in some sense balanced by the rational mind, there's also a balancing there. Now, being a more intuitive person, I definitely tilt towards a dominance on one system, but I do have a highly developed rational and logical sequential side that keeps me grounded and allows me to be highly productive. So there is a balancing of that, of course. So the practices I teach of breathwork, qigong, yoga, dance, coaching all help with the faculty of intuition and becoming a self-healer. If you'd like more information on this, please visit the bios, the links, and send me a private message or a book on my Book Now link to get an appointment scheduled today. Have an excellent day. Follow your highest excitement. Aya Om.